It had taken Rita and Dr. Lloyd a few minutes to complete sponge bathe Lincoln entirely. Despite his condition, Lincoln didn't struggle at all while being bathed with the warm shower on him. Not to their surprise, Lincoln seemed slightly to enjoy the experience as he grabbed another sponge and tried washing himself. Whoa, careful there, kiddo, Lloyd said as Lincoln pressed the sponge near his surgical wounds near his chest. You might hurt yourself if you press there too hard. Huh? Lincoln muttered, looking down at his wounds. He looked slightly upset as he noticed and begins to grimace over the sights of the black stitches holding his surgical wounds together. What there? Lincoln asked as he slurred, retarded tone, while slightly sounding nervous. You had surgery right there. Those stitches are holding your wounds together. If they get too wet, they might come loose, so you'll need to be careful, Rita warned him. Lincoln didn't seem to understand what Rita was talking about, and it wasn't very much of a surprise to either of them. Since his mindset was still of a toddler, though Lincoln seemed to recover a bit of his memories, he had a hard time trouble in understanding complex issue like this. I'm sure Lincoln gets what you're saying, Miss Loud. He doesn't seem to understand the complex issue situations such as this due to his mindset, Lloyd informed her. How could I make him understand what am I telling him? Rita wondered. You'll have to communicate with him. It's the only way you would a toddler. Like I said, Lincoln's mindset is set back of a toddler, so you'll need to communicate with him. So that way you could do as a small toddler daughter of yours, Lloyd answered. Rita looked back at Lincoln, who was touching his stitches, and one of her hand showed her hands towards him to make him stop. Lincoln, don't do that, sweetie. You'll hurt yourself, Rita said, not wanting to reopen the surgical rooms. Hurts. It hurts, Lincoln said in a painful voice. I know, sweetie. You'll need to let them heal, and you need to not touch them, Rita urged Lincoln. Lincoln didn't seem to understand what she said, so because he tried scratching his wounds again. It hurts. Stop. Not stop. Lincoln moaned in pain while scratching. Lincoln, no! You have to stop doing that, Rita urged more sternly this time and grabbed Lincoln's free hand, which still had his IV needle in it. Rita reassured Lincoln that wouldn't struggle, since that she got a hold of his hand with the IV needle still inside. But she was wrong. Lincoln continued to struggle, forcing Rita to tighten her grip. Let's go! Stop! Lincoln yelled, struggling to get even more. Please, Lincoln, try to understand me, Rita begged him. Hurts me! You hurt me! Stop! Lincoln cried, feeling his IV needle pushing deeper into his wrist, and it hurts! I'm not trying to hurt you, Lincoln. I'm trying to help you, Rita replied, trying to get Lincoln under control. No, you hurt! My hand hurts! Lincoln said, looking down at his hand while struggling. Miss Loud, you're gripping too tight on his IV needle, Lloyd pointed out. Rita looked at Lincoln, who had a pained look on his face, and she gently let go of his wrist. Lincoln tried to stand up, but he couldn't move due to his paralysis. Can't move! Why can't move? Lincoln moaned, squirming about. Lincoln, you're paralyzed from the waist down. You won't be able to move your legs, Rita said in a sad voice. A puzzled look came over Lincoln's face as he seemed to be trying to get the understanding of what his mother was saying, but he no longer understood the meaning of the word paralyzed, so this left him confused. Parasite? Lincoln stammered, trying to speak clearly. He doesn't seem to understand what you're saying, Miss Loud. Lincoln doesn't seem to know the meaning of paralyzed, Dr. Lloyd replied. Rita didn't know what else to do or how to make Lincoln understand her. The situation was slightly frustrating, but at the same time saddening. Lincoln's mind has been set back to the brain-damaged mess, and Rita had no idea how to properly communicate with him to get him back to understanding serious situations. She expected this, however, knowing how bad his carnal damages and injuries were. This is just horrible. Lincoln's mind is all messed up, and I can't do anything about it, Rita thought, forming her eyes again. Ma, why you hurt? Lincoln asked, noticing tears in Rita's eyes. I'm fine, sweetie. Just try and not to hurt yourself, Rita replied, wiping the tears from her eyes. Lincoln nodded and slowly lay still against the shower as Rita took a sponge and washed the rest of the soap off of Lincoln's body. Lloyd then fetched a towel and then handed to Rita, and then she showed her how to properly dry him off without opening his wounds. While Lincoln was all dried off, Rita and Lloyd helped redress him with a new disposable gown and a diaper. Lincoln didn't seem to like the diaper very much because he struggled a bit as Rita helped Dr. Lloyd strap it on him. No! Lincoln stuttered as the diaper was strapped on him. Sorry, sweetie, but it's for your own good, Rita said sadly. All right, let's get him back to his hospital room, Lloyd said, then gently lift Lincoln up in his arms. Rita slowly followed him, while wheeling Lincoln's IV pole with her. Meanwhile, in Lincoln's hospital room, as the grades had arrived, and along with Ronnie Ann's mother, to see how Lincoln was recovering, they all just looked as worried as Lincoln's sisters did, when they all had been aware of how serious Lincoln's injuries were, and fearing for his well-being and for his life. Will Lincoln recognize any of us? Maria Santiago asked Lori. It's hard to say. His memory with us is still fuzzy a lot of areas, so I can't be sure, Lori replied. I just hope he isn't in any pain, Carlota said worriedly. As on cue, Dr. Lloyd came in the hospital room with Lincoln in his arms, followed by Rita, who was wheeling his IV pole. As soon as the grades got a good look at Lincoln and his surgical rooms, they felt a bit of despair through them. Since he had no bandages, Lincoln's surgical wounds were completely visible, and they looked very unsettling. Oh my god, what happened to him? Frida exclaimed in shock. The poor guy looks like a train hit him, Rosa added. Lincoln stared at the Cascades in confusion, obviously not recognizing any of them, though Ronnie Ann had been an exception. Whoa, dude, why is Lincoln in diapers? Carlino asked, noticing a diaper on Lincoln. He's not able to use the restroom properly like before, due to his brain damage, so he has to wear one for now, Rita answered. This is horrible, Hector said. Dr. Lloyd set Lincoln back down on the bed, which had now clean sheets on it, and then told one of the nurses to fetch some bandages, and Lincoln trembled as several nurses approached him with bandages and surgical and medical tape. Clearly nervous and distressed. No, what doing? Lincoln stammered, trembling. I need you to hold still, Lincoln. We're going to dress your surgical wounds so that way they can heal properly, one of the male nurses said, taking a hold of Lincoln's good hand. Lincoln seemed to understand this because he stayed very still as the two nurses began gently redress Lincoln's surgical wounds. I guess this is really true. He really was injured very badly, Maria said sadly. Yes, I'm afraid so, Miss Santiago, Rita replied in a saddened tone. No thanks to her, Ronnie Ann said, glaring over at Luan. Now, she didn't do it on purpose. It was just an accident, Rosa said. Yeah, some accident. Lincoln's practically a vegetable because of Luan, Ronnie Ann pointed out. Ronnie Ann, you're not the only one who's upset here. All of us are, Frida said in a scolding voice. Yet that does not mean we could treat Luan like garbage. We just need to put it behind us and move on. Ronnie Ann glanced over at Luan, who was standing furthest away from the rest of the family, looking upset and downtrodden. It was clear that she felt horrible for her prank accident. I still don't trust Luan, Ronnie Ann said coldly. Dr. Lloyd and the nurses finished redressing Lincoln's wounds with fresh bandages, and then they informed the family that in the Cascades that they could stay as long as they wanted until 10 p.m., and then they left the room. The Cascades and Lincoln's sisters began speaking to Lincoln and trying to converse with him, but he seems to be having a very hard time trying to converse back. Lincoln's mindset was set back to toddler, made it very difficult, so Lynn and Rita just stood furthest away from the group next to Luan, who looked upset. Are you trying to speak to Lincoln? Maybe apologize to her? Rita asked her. It's not like I'll do anything. He hates me. Even with the brain damage, he still hates me, Luan answered with a depressed tone in her voice. I can't exactly blame him after what you did, and it's going to be a while before he trusts you again, Lynn said, not trying to insult her. Luan knew that if this was true, and she couldn't blame Lincoln either, even if he decided to never trust Luan again, she wouldn't be surprised. Lincoln had every right to hate Luan after everything she had done to him, and she had never been able to reach his potential in maturity due to his injuries. He had never been able to walk again either. Luan had truly messed up big time, and she knew that if it was possible for Lisa to try to repair some of the damage done to Lincoln's body, she wouldn't be able to repair all of it. Luan looked around the room and then noticed something. Lisa was absent from the room. Hey, where's Lisa? Luan asked her parents. Rita and Lynn looked around the room, but they couldn't find her anywhere. Then they asked Lincoln's sisters and the Cascades family if they had saw Lisa left the room, but they all shook their heads. Unknown to all of them, Lisa had snuck out of the room and followed Dr. Lloyd down the hall towards a very large room which was labeled Medical Files, to avoid being seen. She hid behind a portable hospital bed until Dr. Lloyd emerged from inside the room and headed off to another part of the hospital. Once Lloyd finally was out of sight, Lisa left her hiding spot and then headed towards the doors, hoping that it wasn't locked, and to her relief, it wasn't locked. So, allowing her to enter the room without any trouble, the room was a small square-shaped chamber with large filing cabinets lined from each of the walls, with the letters ranging from A to Z. This may take longer than I thought, Lisa muttered, heading towards the filing cabinet on her left. She opened the bottom drawer and skimmed through the files with the L section in hopes to find Lincoln's medical file. Lisa's plan was to find the file of Lincoln's x-rays info and in his current condition of hopes to access the amount of damage done to Lincoln's spine and brain. If Lisa were able to get more accurate at Lincoln's internal injuries from the x-rays and the CT scan results, she may have the chance of possibility of repairing some of the damage done to his spine and his brain. While Lisa knew that not all of it could, Lincoln's injuries may be curable due to severity of how much damage his internal organs took from the prank accident, she hoped that she could at least heal some of the brain damage that is done to Lincoln's brain. However, Lisa knew that Lincoln would still remain paralyzed from the waist down, and Dr. Lloyd said that the shattered pieces of Lincoln's spine had been surgically removed due to how intensive and damaged it was, so there was no way of repairing it. Lisa was already had a plan on how to heal some of her brother's injuries, and yet she still needed Lincoln's medical files if she were to go through with it in order to prevent any further accidents. Lisa would use one of her siblings for the experiments in the past, and many of them didn't end very well, and this was definitely one experiment that Lisa knew she couldn't mess up. Lincoln's life could possibly be on the line, and if Lisa screwed something up, it could very well mean the death of Lincoln. "It's gotta be here somewhere," Lisa muttered, growing impatient as she continued to search for the medical files. It would have been seen to find Lincoln's file wouldn't be that easy. There were so many other filing cabinets with files under the L, so Lisa figured that it would be quite some time. She still wanted to be as quick with her as she could through, though, and she was afraid that Dr. Lloyd or another hospital staff member might enter the room and chase Lisa out, ruining any chance that she had to be quick, and her search could be finally through. She was afraid that Dr. Lloyd or another hospital staff might show up, but of course she needed to find the info to try to help Lincoln. Having so much luck at the first cabinet, Lisa tried the second one to her, hoping to find Lincoln's life file. However, it wasn't there either, so she tried the third filing cabinet. No luck there either. As Lisa was about to move to the fourth cabinet, she saw approaching the footsteps from outside the room. "Shoot! Better hide," Lisa said frantically, looking for a hiding spot. She saw an empty storage locker right near from the far end of the corner, so she ran into the room and squeezed it inside just as the person entered the room. It was Dr. Lloyd. Lisa made sure that the locker was fully closed as Lloyd approached one of the filing cabinets and pushed it open. Muttering to himself as he did so, Lloyd then looked down and saw the filing cabinet door that Lisa had forgot to close and just walked over to it. I could have sworn I had this closed the last time I was here. I must have missed it, Lloyd said to himself, pushing it closed with his foot. Lisa then watched as Lloyd placed the file with the sixth cabinet in the L section, and then he said something unsettling. "I really wish I could have told the Ladd family the truth about Lincoln, of what I found in his x-ray an hour ago, but if I did," Lloyd paused with a sad sigh, "I don't think they would be able to handle it. How am I supposed to tell them that Lincoln only has a month left to live?" Lisa felt her heart nearly stop as he heard Dr. Lloyd say that. Lincoln only had a month to live? What did Dr. Lloyd mean by that? Lisa began to feel her heart beat faster than it could ever before, and what Dr. Lloyd found on Lincoln's x-ray was so serious that it would cost him his life in a month. Whatever it was, Lisa knew it couldn't be good, so she watched Dr. Lloyd place an x-ray folder into the filing cabinet under the L section, and then he sighed and then shut the drawer. "I'll have to tell them at some point, otherwise they'll never forgive me," Dr. Lloyd said sadly, as then he turned around and left the room. As soon as Dr. Lloyd was gone, Lisa emerged from the inside of the locker, feeling more anxious than ever. Despite being a 6-year-old prodigy and rarely showing any sorrow's emotions, this had been nearly the moment that made Lisa lose it. The thought of Lincoln dying from unknown injury terrified Lisa, and she knew that the answers that she thought was in the files. Lucky for Lisa, she had been in what seemed to be a drawer that Dr. Lloyd placed the x-ray, so she wouldn't have to continue to search any longer. The file was quickly in the second filing cabinet drawer, so Lisa was able to reach it easily. Once she opened it, she found the file with the L section labeled Lincoln Loud, and pulled it out, and Lisa opened up the file to see Lincoln's medical test results from both his x-rays and CT scans and surgical files. The first one Lisa checked was an x-ray photo taken by one of Lincoln's CT scans, which she held up into the light to get a better look, and saw what shocked her. The x-ray Lisa held was taken the day Lincoln was brought to the hospital right after that horrible prank accident, and it looked as horrible as Dr. Lloyd described. A large piece of Lincoln's skull around his forehead had been broken in a triangular shape that had been embedded deep into the frontal lobe of his brain, and a long crack could be seen near the sides of his skull, which appeared in multiple bruises and certain areas of Lincoln's brain. The CT scan showed Lincoln's spine completely cracked and broken near the waistline, with several spinal discs shattered into pieces, and also several broken rib bones and a puncture wound in Lincoln's left lung. And the next two x-rays were the ones taken after Lincoln's surgery, and the one was taken just a few hours ago. And there was one that Lisa had been dreading to see. The x-ray was a CT scan brain, showing a more detailed advanced image of Lincoln's brain, and Lisa noticed something very near the bottom of the brain was a few inches from the brain system. It was hard to say due to the lights being slightly out of focus. But once Lisa moved the x-ray to the light, she saw what it actually was. It made her heart skip a beat. A scraggly white blotch that could be seen in the x-ray extended a few inches away from the bottom. Lincoln's brain, upon closer inspection, Lisa realized in horror that his brain had a hemorrhage, and it wasn't very big, but it was pretty visible on the x-ray and easy to miss unless you look closely enough. No, why? Why didn't the doctor say anything? Lisa said in an angry tone of voice. She couldn't really understand why Dr. Lloyd had to keep something like this from her family, and more to do so. How could such a small brain hemorrhage kill Lincoln in just a month? Surely it would be surgically drained if it was small, right? However, inspecting the area where the hemorrhage was located at, Lisa understood why. The hemorrhage was far too down to the brain, which would make it extremely difficult and dangerous for the surgeons to maneuver the microsection, and it would be due to the brain flips. And it was the only way to reach that far down in the brain, which makes incisions with it with surgical knives. And of course, it would make it far more dangerous for them, and of course it could prove fatal. The radiation to your treatment would also be not so good, too. The hemorrhage wasn't a tumor, and it would mean the only thing: Lincoln wouldn't survive long. The hemorrhage would just keep getting larger and larger and eventually kill Lincoln. And Lisa felt her eyes welled up in tears with a horrible realization. No, this can't be. This can't be happening. It can't. Lisa whimpered softly, almost at the verge of a breakdown. She looked at the x-rays and then at Lincoln's medical files and came to the conclusion the only way she had any chance of saving Lincoln's life is if she made copies of the original files. Lisa had originally begun working on a special invention before the pranking accident, the one that would revitalize the medical advancement, and yet again she had to put it on hold for the time being. Lisa realized that its invention could be the only one saving Lincoln's life. And the key to save Lincoln's life, of course, to have how to treat him properly. And as for Lisa, she had to snuck into Lori's cell phone pocket to get for every occasion. She pulled out the phone and snapped several photos of Lincoln's x-ray and CT scans in the medical files, then slipped it back into her pocket and then placed the original files back in the filing cabinet. As Lisa headed out of the medical room, she then reflected on what she heard Dr. Lloyd say about how much Lincoln only had a month to live, and made her heart beat faster than both for fear and anxiety. Lisa vowed to complete the invention before the end of the month and tried to save her best brother's life before it was too late. She wondered too if she should tell her parents about what she heard, but luckily decided against it. Lisa's family was already going through enough pressure with Lincoln being on the current state, and if she were to tell them that she just heard Dr. Lloyd say, this would make things much worse than they were now. Luan also was suffering through the most, as she was the cause of all this, and if she were to hear her brother would die in just a month due to his fatal hemorrhage, she'd probably end up falling into much deeper depression than she is now. Lisa couldn't be too surprised if she tried to commit suicide or anything. Sadly, Lisa said, I'll have to find a way to save you, bro. I swear upon the file I won't let you die, not while I'm still breathing. Then she headed back towards the recovery room, praying for a miracle.